In Chapter 3 of Food Safety for Food Service Employees, we're going to look at hand washing. Hand washing is one of the best means of avoiding illness and the spread of illness available to us today, yet it is still one of the most underutilized public health measures. In 2005, the authors of a book went into workplaces and took samples of surfaces to see where they would find bacteria. They found that phone receivers tended to be the most highly contaminated surfaces, with as many as 25,127 bacteria per square inch of surface area. They found that water fountain handles, computer keyboards, hot and cold water knobs on the hand sinks in the restrooms, restroom door and toilet stall door handles, paper towel dispenser knobs, and soap dispensers also tended to be highly contaminated. They found that toilet seats, with as few as 49 bacteria per square inch of surface area, were one of the least contaminated surfaces in the places that they looked. The food code says that food employees shall clean their hands and exposed portions of their arms or surrogate prosthetic devices for hands or arms immediately before engaging in food preparation, including working with exposed food, clean equipment and utensils, and unwrapped single-service and single-use articles. Food employees shall clean their hands and exposed portions of their arms or surrogate prosthetic devices for hands or arms before working with food and as necessary while working with food to prevent contamination of the food using the following procedure: by wetting their hands under warm, at least 100 degrees Fahrenheit, running water, by using an approved cleanser to scrub the hands and all exposed portions of the arms, or surrogate prosthetic devices for hands or arms, using vigorous friction on the surfaces of the lathered fingers, the fingertips, the areas between the fingers, the hands, and the arms for at least 20 to 30 seconds, by scrubbing the fingernails and area under the fingernails with a nail brush, by thoroughly rinsing their hands under clean running warm water, and by immediately following the cleaning procedure with thorough drying of clean hands and arms or surrogate prosthetic devices for hands and arms by using a single-use towel. This picture shows human skin as viewed through a microscope. In the middle, you see the epidermis, which is a layer of stacked, dead skin cells. Pathogens in the environment stick to these epidermal cells. Every stage of the hand washing procedure is important as it helps to remove these dead skin cells along with the pathogens that are stuck to them. The warm water helps the soap to work properly. The soap helps break down the grease and oils that hold the dead skin cells together. The running water helps flush away any loose dead skin cells and the transient microorganisms or pathogens that are stuck to them. But it is the friction from scrubbing the hands and the friction that comes from drying with a paper towel that break the dead skin cells loose so they can be carried away along with any transient microorganisms or pathogens, and that actually results in a reduction of the number of microorganisms. For food employees in a food establishment, hand washing may only take place in an approved hand sink. You may not use a 3-compartment sink used for dishwashing for washing your hands. You also may not wash your hands in a food preparation sink, in a mop sink, or in a toilet. This picture shows a hand wash sink in a food establishment. Notice the controls on the water taps that allow them to be turned off with the wrists or elbows. This allows you to wash your hands and then use your wrists or elbows to turn off the water to prevent recontaminating your hands. If your hand sink does not have these type of controls, you can leave the water running when you're done rinsing your hands, dry them with the paper towel, and then use the paper towel to turn off the hot and cold water to prevent recontaminating your hands. This picture shows a hand sink that was being used for purposes other than washing hands. A hand wash sink in a food establishment may be only used for the purpose of hand washing. Notice the residue and materials on the faucet itself and on the handles to turn the water off and on. Also notice the residue in the basin of the sink that almost appears to be mold. Using a sink such as this to wash your hands may not result in hands that are clean. This picture shows a paper towel dispenser. Hands have to be dried using a single-use towel, for example, a paper towel. You may not use cloth towels for drying hands in a food establishment. Some examples of times when you should wash your hands in a food establishment include after touching bare human body parts other than clean hands and clean exposed portions of the arms, after using the toilet room, after caring for or handling service animals or aquatic animals, after coughing, sneezing, using a handkerchief or disposable tissue, or using tobacco, eating, or drinking something, after handling soiled equipment or utensils, during food preparation, as often as necessary to remove soil and contamination and to prevent cross-contamination when changing tasks, when switching between working with raw foods and working with ready-to-eat foods, before putting your gloves on to work with food, and after engaging in any other activities that may contaminate the hands, for example, dishwashing. It is important to pay close attention to the fingernail area, since the area under the fingernails harbors the most microorganisms of any part of the hands and is the most difficult part of the hands to clean. A study has shown that artificial fingernails harbor more microorganisms than natural fingernails even when they're the same length. The study was called a comparison of hand washing techniques to remove Escherichia coli and Kaliki viruses under natural or artificial fingernails, and it appeared in the Journal of Food Protection, Volume 66, Number 12. In an experiment done by the authors of the study, they contaminated the hands of volunteers with E. coli JM109, which will not cause people to get sick, but is related to E. coli 0157H7, and with feline Kaliki virus, strain F9, which will not cause the volunteers to get sick, but which is related to norovirus. The volunteers then performed different processes for cleaning the hands. Some of the volunteers rubbed their hands together for a while, then rinsed them off with tap water and dried them. Some of the volunteers used regular liquid soap, scrubbing their hands for 20 to 30 seconds, rinsing them, and then drying them with a paper towel. Some of the volunteers used antibacterial liquid soap to scrub their hands for 20 to 30 seconds before rinsing them and drying them with a paper towel. Some of the volunteers used regular liquid soap to scrub for 20 to 30 seconds before rinsing their hands, drying them with a paper towel, and then applying alcohol hand sanitizer gel. And some of the volunteers used regular liquid soap to scrub for 20 to 30 seconds, and then used a nail brush in the fingernail and cuticle area before rinsing their hands and drying them with a paper towel. Finally, one group of volunteers did not wash their hands at all, but simply applied alcohol-based hand sanitizer gel. The authors then took cultures off the volunteers' hands to see who had microorganisms left on their hands. What they found was that the people that got the greatest reduction of microorganisms on their hands were the people that had used regular liquid soap to scrub for 20-30 seconds and then used the nail brush to scrub the fingernails and cuticles. They found the least reduction of microorganisms from the people who did not wash their hands, but rather who used alcohol-based hand sanitizer gel. This means that people who rubbed their hands together and then rinsed them off and dried them were able to reduce the level of microorganisms on their hands more than people who used hand sanitizer gel. They found higher microbial counts were recovered from hands with artificial nails than from hands with natural nails. And they found higher microbial counts were recovered from longer nails versus short nails. We can take away from this that the best practice to use to reduce microorganisms on your hands is to use regular liquid soap, scrubbing for 20 to 30 seconds, and to use a nail brush to scrub the fingernails and cuticles when washing your hands. Another good practice is to keep fingernails trimmed short and to not wear artificial fingernails if working with exposed foods. Food employees are required to keep their hands and exposed portions of their arms clean, to wash with soap and water and a nail brush, scrubbing for 20 to 30 seconds, rinsing them, and then drying them with a single-use towel. Food employees are also required to keep their fingernails short and in good condition. The fingernails should be smooth and cleanable. They are required to not wear fingernail polish or artificial fingernails when working with exposed foods. And finally, food employees may not wear jewelry on their hands or arms while working with food. In order to use hand sanitizers in a food service establishment, the following conditions have to be met. The hand sanitizer can only be applied after properly washing the hands. Hand sanitizers may not be used to take the place of proper hand washing. An approved hand sanitizer is classified as an indirect food additive and must be labeled as being approved. Non-approved hand sanitizers are prohibited from use after washing hands before handling food. Alcohol-based hand sanitizers work by denaturing proteins in pathogens on the hands. Alcohol-based hand sanitizers may not have any effect on naked RNA viruses, like hepatitis A virus or norovirus. For a hand sanitizer to work, it needs to have at least 60% alcohol, but 70% alcohol concentrations are better. This is the end of Chapter 3.